Black Panther: Wakanda Forever had the debut of the live-action version of Shuri as the figurehead of the MCU's most advanced nation. And yes, that is a huge spoiler, but if you haven't seen the movie yet, what kind of comic book fan are you? While fans of the series were still grieving over the loss of Chadwick Boseman, it was left up to Letitia Wright to usher the Black Panther into the next phase of the MCU. Now, this decision was not the result of some studio execs saying, what if we make it Black Panther's little sister? Shuri has actually taken up the Black Panther mantle in the comic books as well, and was a capable leader for the people of Wakanda. Does Letitia Wright's depiction of Shuri as the Black Panther hold up to her comic book counterpart? And we'll also ask the question we ask every show. Is she comics accurate? For those of you who have not been to my channel before, I'm going to compare and contrast three main aspects of Shuri between her comic book version and the MCU live action version. The three aspects are personality, appearance, and abilities. After I make my comparison, I'm going to assign the live action version of the character a comics accurate score, ranging from 1 to 5 comic racks, 5 being a film like Logan, and 1 being, I don't know, anything Sony Studios puts out. I am also going to assess if its comic accuracy is for the better or worse for the character. While I know there may be other cartoon versions of the character, I am choosing to only focus on her comic book origins as the source material. Now that we got all of that out of the way, let's get into it. Even though T'Challa debuted in Marvel Comics in 1966, his sister Shuri wouldn't be seen in the comics for another 40 years. Talk about a delayed introduction. Shuri was created by Reginald Hudlin and John Romita Jr. and debuted in Black Panther Volume 4, Issue Number 2. Hudlin is more widely known for directing classic 90s films such as House Party and Boomerang. None of those films seem like they were directed by a future comic book writer unless you think Kid and Play would have made a great superhero duo. In 2005, while serving as the president of BET Entertainment, Hudlin was asked by Marvel Comics to write a Black Panther miniseries. When asked why he decided to give T'Challa a sister in his series, he said, "It just seemed for me that, again, when you're royalty, you're not just gonna have one kid, you're gonna have an heir and a spare, right? I wanted girls who read the book to feel as empowered as boys." Reginald Hudlin went on to write over 18 issues of the Black Panther and eventually adapted it to an animated series that aired on BET, exploring monumental stories in the character's life, including his marriage to Storm of the X-Men. Yes, Black Panther wifed up Storm, as well as Shuri's ascension to the throne and wearing the mantle of the Black Panther. Whereas her brother was raised to lead the nation of Wakanda, Shuri stepped into the role out of necessity due to the incapacitation of her brother. Now let's focus on the events that shaped Shuri's personality in the comic books and compare her life events with those in both Black Panther films. In the comics, we're introduced to Shuri as she rushes to the arena on the one day that any Wakandan can challenge the Black Panther for the throne of the nation. She sneaks out against her mother's will and eludes the palace guards in an effort to compete for the title of the Black Panther. By the time she actually makes it to the ring, her brother T'Challa has successfully defeated his uncle Cyan and is made the new Black Panther. Shuri's introduction to the series shows her as being a brilliant, headstrong young woman who wants to serve Wakanda but is defiant and tends to put herself and others in danger because of her impetuousness. A classic younger sibling character trait. During the Dark Reign storyline in Marvel Comics, Dr. Doom, working with Namor, attacked T'Challa. Okay, can we pause and digest this team up of Dr. Doom and Namor? How did those two become best buds? But that's not why we're here. After this attack, T'Challa falls into a life-threatening coma. Shuri is then selected to become the Black Panther, but her hubris leads to the Panther God withholding its blessing. Despite this, she continues to hold the title and saves Wakanda from an invasion. Shuri initially lacks diplomacy in her dealings with other nations, but eventually learns patience and receives the blessing of the Panther God. And that guy doesn't give out blessings to just anyone. Letitia Wright plays Shuri, the younger sister of T'Challa, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Wright's version of Shuri is much younger than her comic book counterpart, with a playful relationship with T'Challa. Shuri's scientific acumen is a large part of her personality in the MCU. She is a genius who designs and modifies many things in her futuristic lab, including the Black Panther suit, weapons, vehicles, and even some forms of tech-driven medicine. In the first Black Panther film, Shuri's general disposition is that of a lovable but obnoxious teenager, but with the intellectual ability to solve any of Wakanda's technical issues. unlike her comic book counterpart, movie Shuri is not much of a fighter, and we see very little hand-to-hand combat from her. The 2022 sequel Black Panther: Wakanda Forever portrays a different personality of Shuri compared to the previous film. She is seen trying to recreate the destroyed heart-shaped herb to save her dying brother, who is suffering from an unknown illness. This is the first time that we as an audience have ever seen Shuri so unsure of herself. As the film shows the grieving nation of Wakanda following the death of T'Challa and actor Chadwick Boseman, Shuri is depicted as a somber woman who is trying to protect her country, which is under threat from other nations. But after trying to convince Namor to stand down and quickly learning that Namor is not the stand down type, he proceeds to attack Wakanda and kill her mother Queen Ramonda. Shuri then recreates the heart-shaped herb and goes to the ancestral plane where she meets Eric Killmonger, her first cousin and nemesis from the first Black Panther film. Killmonger tries to convince her to embrace her hurt and become an agent of vengeance. Shuri eventually defeats Namor in hand-to-hand combat and decides to let him live to form a truce between him and the Talokanini, saving the lives of both of their people. There are differences between Shuri's comic book appearance and her live-action adaptation. She had a very distinct uniform in her early appearances in the Black Panther comics. She typically wore a natural low hairstyle with a green or purple ethereal tunic with a Pharaoh-style headdress. When Shuri becomes the Black Panther, we usually see her in the familiar catsuit of the Panther for the rest of the comic book series, which is designed to fit her physique, but also has a regal collar of fur that sets it apart from her brothers. And I'm sure Shuri's girlfriends recommend she add some accessories to her outfit. Another note is that Shuri appears to be a woman to her mid to late 20s, even though her age is never confirmed. When Shuri is seen standing amongst the women of the royal court, she does not seem particularly younger than any of them besides the elders, and the middle-aged Wakanda women with too much Botox. There was a lot of thought put into the clothing and hairstyle of all the Wakandan characters of the Black Panther film. Each outfit was designed to represent a specific aspect of Wakandan culture. Costume designer Ruth Carter wanted to use authentic designs from the various cultures within Africa, merged with a touch of Afropunk and a smidge of Afrofuturism. This gave each of the various tribes of Wakanda, such as the Jabari or the River Tribe, their own unique style. As for Shuri, Carter wanted her brilliance as a teenage scientist to be shown in her non-traditional, innovative style of dress. That white dress she's wearing isn't just a beautiful garment. It's a high-fashion update of something the science-minded Shuri would be expected to don whenever she peers into a microscope. When we get to Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, Shuri is now a grown woman in her 20s, having returned from the blip in Avengers Endgame, and I assume wearing the same clothes she was wearing before the blip. But her personal style did not change post-blip. She still avoids wearing traditional cultural clothes. Carter tried to maintain a casual style of dress that served as layers of protection from the outside world of loss and grief she's experiencing. We learned in the first film that Shuri is bored with tradition when she said in the first film, "Oh, this corset is uncomfortable." When it comes to fashion, she's more into the tech side of it. In the first film, she wore a lot of layers, so for the sequel, her protective layers were still there. We finally get to Shuri's Black Panther suit, which was specifically designed to resonate Shuri's physique and personality. Even though she is completely covered, her suit has a higher neckline and a specific pattern of dots on her helmet. These dots are the same pattern that we saw on her face during her fight scene in the Endgame film, as well as T'Challa's funeral. Carter also talks about how the suit represented the end of her emotional journey in the film. She clearly earns the suit, and it's a big moment in the film. Therefore, the suit needed to fit not only her physique and her body, but it also needed to have a presence and a brilliance. It's time for us to look at Shuri's comic book abilities and her MCU live-action adaptation abilities. Now we have to break this down into the top 4 most important abilities, or we'll be doing this all day. I've selected intellectual prowess, superhuman abilities, natural physical abilities, and technological abilities. Let's bring up the abilities board. While Shuri's comic book stats as the Black Panther seem average, it is her will that is her greatest asset, which isn't on the list. This is what allows her to stand up to enemies that are far superior to her. You've got heart, kid. It's clear that the MCU decided to strengthen Shuri's intellect by having her be smarter than everyone she encounters in the MCU. Take that, smarty pants, Bruce Banner. Her physical score is lower because we see that she is only able to engage in hand-to-hand combat after she takes the heart-shaped herb. And she's only slightly less fragile looking than Ant-Man, when he's actually an ant. I think the comic book Shuri is more balanced in her abilities, but the MCU Shuri is way more interesting. Now, Shuri's story continues past her role as Black Panther in the comic books. She actually ends up having her body killed while her soul resided in an ethereal plane with the ancestors of Wakanda, because that's a thing in the Marvel Universe. T'Challa eventually brings Shuri back to life, but she returns with a new series of supernatural abilities. I am not going to add them to the list, but yes, I am aware that Shuri has way more abilities in her superhero toolbox. We're just going to stick to everything that is applicable to the comic book and live-action version of the character. Now that we've gone over all the major aspects of Shuri from the comic book and the MCU, we can now ask the question, is Letitia Wright's portrayal of Shuri comics accurate? Drum roll, please. In my opinion, yes. Now, there definitely are changes between the different mediums, but measuring those differences, I would still give the MCU version 3 comic racks. Those changes have made Shuri's live-action version better than her comic book origin character. Letitia Wright has done a phenomenal job bringing Shuri to life, and I look forward to seeing her wearing the mantle one more time. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to give a comic book fan like myself the opportunity to bring you into my world. If you enjoyed this video, do all of the YouTube things. Like and subscribe so you never miss a new video. My name is Tom, and this has been Comics Accurate.